Is this where you failed in the past? If it is, then don't allow past failures to predict future non-results. A failure is only a failure if you didn't damn well learn something from it. Your results are the other side of the things that you don't want to do. Alphas, as always, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you here. Andy Naylor here, CEO and founder of Naylor Body Design and host of your Optimal Alpha podcast. And we're back with always seems to be one of our most popular episodes, which is Q&A. Regular listeners will know these Q&As are real questions that have come from our clients in our high performance program that they've asked to their coach. And of course, these questions have been answered because they could be quite a few weeks old by this point. And what my team do is decide to sort of put them into a little stack of sort of 10 or so and throw them at me and see what happens. And so I have not seen them. I've got them on a page in front of me and I'm just going to go through them. So of course, what I might say here, as always, might differ from what the coach said to the client. And I don't know, and I always think this is a good idea, I don't know which client asked which question. So therefore, I have absolutely no context whatsoever around the question, which means really what I'm trying to do is just navigate my thought process. And really that's what this episode is about. Not necessarily the answer, I guess maybe more where my mind goes in terms of actually trying to figure out what might the context be and where we're going to go. Anyway, enough of that. Let's dive in. 10 questions. Okay, number one. Is it okay if I change some of the exercises that my coach gives me? Well, yes and no, right? So it depends what the exercise is. Depends if your coach is giving you flexibility in certain movements. And I guess it depends how rigid in your training plan you want to be. There should always be room for auto-regulation, which is just a fancy name for kind of changing things as you feel that you need to. A couple of things that come to mind are don't change things as much as you think you need to. Okay, let's imagine the gym is empty. You can go on everything that you want. So you've not got to wait for kit. You've not got to change things because of that reason. Let's imagine there's no technical reason. I personally wouldn't swap movements around a lot. This is just my perspective, I stick to the same movements for as long as I possibly can. I will extract as much progress out of one movement for as long as I possibly can. Why? Well, I get used to that movement. So if it's a piece of equipment, I'm used to it. It's angles, the way it sets up. I'm used to exactly what weight and what reps and how many sets I've been making progress on. So my ability to understand whether I'm actually making progress or not is really high because I've got specific data going back weeks, months. For me personally, the only time I will then change an exercise is, generally speaking, I just can't make progress anymore. And it will be 2 to 3 weeks of me stuck before I'm like, okay, I'm now stuck. So me just not making progress 1 week could be anything, could be hydration, sleep, stress, like anything could be sort of hampering progress in 1 week. So I pay no attention to it. By about a third week of me nailing everything that I possibly can and still not making progress on a particular movement, I'm then like, aha, it's time to rotate that movement with something that's like for like, something that's going to do the same job, but is just a different piece of equipment. And what tends to happen at that point is you start, of course, lower down in terms of weight, probably, than you really could do because you don't really know where you are. It's safer to start lower down. So what you do is you immediately start to see progress. So if you were, say, running at 90% on a particular or 95% on a particular piece of kit and you're like, you just can't make progress, you go on to, say, one incline press and you go to another incline movement, you might get on that movement and really be at like 65, 70% of your potential. Because you're just kind of, easing into that movement. Safety is a key thing there. But then you start seeing progress straight away. And that in itself can be really useful. But if you're swapping things around too much, you never know if you'll be just like seemingly making progress on everything all of the time. But you're not maximizing any one thing at any one time. So yes, it's okay to change things. The word of warning that I always have is, well, the question is why? Why do you want to change stuff? There's nothing wrong with changing things. There's lots of exercises and movements available to us. For a person, generally there are only so many that are really optimal. And our goal is not to be trying to get through as many of those as quickly as possible. I think for many of us, our goal is to train a very long time in a very healthy, sustainable manner that gives us a great physique, that performs, really well, that gives us everything that we want, no injuries. And there's only, if you think of a leg movement, like compound leg movements, there's only so many, right? You've got leg press and all the variations of that, which are a few. Hack squat, kind of slightly different thing. Of course, you've got front squat, back squat. There's only so many. And you've probably got years of training in front of you. So don't be in a rush to cycle through different movements. But I would also say if you're going to change something, because you give your coach feedback. You might be given a movement and it might not just fit. It might not just feel good. And no one else can ever know that but the person doing the movement. One of the key things to do is record your movements, your failure sets, and you send those to your coach. Because quite often if someone says to me, I'm just not feeling this movement, Andy, and I watch them doing it and I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised because here are all the things that I would change that you're doing. So quite often the first goal would be, rather than cycle through a movement, absolutely nail the form first, like perfect a rep, perfect one rep and then repeat that rep. Most people just, aren't thinking along those lines, which is fine. But I guess they're the things that come to my mind. Yes, it's fine to change exercises, but liaise with coach. If it's a form-based, not feeling it kind of issue, fix that first before changing something. If you change something, bring your coach into that loop so they understand. Good question. Number 2, how important is it to track rest time? Kind of important. It's not going to make or break results for most people. So the people that we work with are very busy, successful individuals. Time and effective and efficient use of time is a big part of their life. So then tracking rest time in between sets would become important. Why? Because it's really easy to get distracted for all of us. Why? Because most of us have got our phone very close to us, or we may be training near people who we want to have a chit chat with, catch up in the morning, whatever it might be. It's easy to get distracted for all of us, me included. Now, our clients will be working off our awesome fitness training app. So they're going to have their phone with them because that's where their training plan is. So then it's really easy to see notifications on WhatsApp, on email, on this, on that, on the other. And before you realize it, 3 to 4 minutes or more have passed between sets. That's an issue. Because if that's happening every set, one, well, the focus is outside of the training. Second, you're not going to get everything done. Or third, you're going to get everything done, but it's going to take a bloody long time to do it. So there's only really 2 things I use my phone for, I think, when I'm training at the moment. One is to play music. Now, that's the only time I listen to music. If I'm doing cardio, I listen to podcasts. I want to use that time to educate myself. So I listen to podcasts a lot. But while I'm training, music. Why? For me personally, music's a massive part of my life, but it can really stir the spirit, so to speak. And I'm sure most of you listening to this will know exactly what I'm on about. A certain tune, really crap example. Think of the Rocky theme tune. Anyone of an age will know what I'm on about. If you're of a certain age, you hear that, it just makes you want to train. I don't know what else to say. You hear it, there's certain tracks that when they come on, they inspire you. So I use music. So anyway, phone is playing music and then a countdown timer. So quite often I'll set that to 60 seconds or 45 seconds. It depends on what the movement is. And it's quite interesting how quick that time runs out compared to if you weren't using a timer. So in other words, what it's doing is it is focusing the session down onto the training and not, messing around in between sets. So I think it's kind of important. There are other things way up the list on that. But for a busy professional who wants to be effective and efficient with their time, tracking rest time, yeah, I would certainly say it doesn't cost nothing to do it, does it? And it's making the session dense. That's what we would say. It's a dense session of training. So for someone who's tracking their rest and keeping it nice and precise, might get done in 45, 60 minutes, what someone else is taking an hour and a half to do. Now, I don't know how valuable your time is, but an extra 30, 45 minutes of my time in my working day is incredibly valuable to me. And it will be to a lot of the people listening to this. So for that reason, I would suggest you do. A stopwatch on a watch would probably be even better because it's not your phone. And I would suggest then you can leave your phone somewhere else, playing music, but in your bag, and then using a stopwatch on your wrist. Number 3, how can I prepare for an event or party when I am tracking on a calorie deficit? So how can you prepare for a party and event? So it depends if you're holding the event or the party, or whether you're going to one. Because if you're holding the event or the party, then you're in control of what's being served. If you're going to an event or a party, you're at the whim of what is being served to you. Now, that would change a lot for me, because if you're holding the event or the party, I would just make sure that the food that I'm either bringing in for the event or I'm preparing myself fits kind of what I want it to. I would make sure I'm cooking and preparing something that, like, that's what I'm going to eat. I'll make a load of stuff over here for people who want to eat anything. And then these things over here, I'm going to prepare for myself. So that kind of fixes that. If you're going out to an event or a party, well, no one's forcing you to eat anything that is being provided to you. No one's forcing you to eat anything. I know a lot of our clients will be going to business seminars, things like that, like workshops and stuff like that. And most often the sort of food that is spread out is very beige. It's just bad food. And so our clients, we would say to them, just imagine that food's not going to be given to you. Take your own food. So now that's a business-based event. So it's quite easy to be able to, if it's more of a social event, then generally the way I would go around this is, if I know I want to stay in a caloric deficit, I'm going to assume that I'm going to a party or an event and I'm going to go over my calories. I'll make that assumption, right or wrongly. So how do I prepare for it? I undereat for 2 days before. And that's an easy way of doing it, isn't it? So maybe undereat. That depends on the calories. I don't really want to say a number here, but say, for me, maybe I undereat by 500 calories for 2 days leading up to the event. I've now given myself an additional 1,000 calorie buffer to use at the event. And then over the course of the week, I've ended up in exactly the same place. That's the easiest thing to do. Assume you'll go over your calories, because that's probably what's going to happen. And then so undereat on your plan by X amount of calories, whatever that might be, depending on where your caloric limit is. And, maybe you don't have to go so deep. Maybe undereat for 3 days. So it's only like 200, 300 calories per day. So you can kind of not really notice it. And then you're going to maybe overeat in the party or event. And then depending on how far over you went or didn't, you can then make up or go further into a deficit the day after. So if you go to the party or the event and you literally lose all self-control and you know that you've smashed more than the 1,000 calorie credit that you had, well, then you just undereat for a couple of days afterwards. It's not necessarily what happens on a singular day. Think of it more of what happens over a week and over a month. Like, yeah, you could massively overeat for 1 day, and yeah, you probably could put a bit of fat on in 1 day. But if you undereat massively, overeat massively, undereat massively, apart from probably digestive issues and maybe, feeling that, like, the mentality side of things, you don't really notice a massive difference. You want to try and flatten things out over the long term. I would also probably, on the morning of the party, well, the other thing you can do, again, depending on what the event or party is you can intermittent fast. Intermittent fasting and fat loss are not connected necessarily as two things together. I could argue that in the other direction as well, but it just helps. Just skip breakfast, basically. Maybe, if you're going out to an event and it starts at 5, maybe have your first meal at 12 to 1, again, depending on your calories for the day. And then you've already given yourself probably an extra meal by the time you come to the event or the party. So they're just some simple strategies. Really, everything I've just said there is caloric management. That's all it is, caloric management. The other side of it is self-control, discipline, when at these sorts of events. That's a completely different topic, and it depends where in your journey. I know people that early on will find self-control here very, very difficult, and eventually it just becomes really easy. The more you hear yourself say no, the better, the further you'll get for yourself. No to an extra drink, no to dessert. And I'm not saying that means life has to be absolutely horrific and boring, but it depends how important the goal is to you. I think I circle back around to that. How important is the goal? If the goal is super important to you, well, then do whatever it bloody well takes to get there. And if that means under eat for days before, days after an intermittent fast on the day, then do so. If the goal is kind of important, then kind of do the things that I've just told you to do. There we go. Number 4, are cold plunges really good for you? Alphas, I interrupt this show with a simple message. This show is here to benefit you and your progression to the best version of yourself. But not only just you, it's also here to benefit the people around you, your loved ones, your friends, other alphas in your vicinity. So why not do a really cool thing today? Something that I would thank you for and maybe someone else would. Share this podcast with at least one other alpha out there who you know would benefit from it. Why not share the information, share the ability for someone else to grow? I'm sure they would thank you. I 100% would absolutely thank you. This podcast only grows by our listeners, our followers doing amazing things like giving us 5-star reviews, downloading podcasts, subscribing, and then of course sharing it with other people. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Share it with one person, and of course drop us a 5-star review, download the podcast, and of course subscribe. And now back to the show. Yeah, kind of. They've become very fashionable. I would definitely say that. I don't know where from. These things tend to sort of rise up in health and fitness. There is nothing new about cold exposure, cold therapy. It's been going on since centuries. So there's nothing new about it. It just seems to have sort of raised itself in our consciousness so much more recently. And there could be cold shower in the morning. There could be swimming in a cold lake. There could be actually having a cold plunge. So for example, if I try and do a cold shower, it doesn't really exist because I live in Dubai. It's that hot. You don't get cold running water. Like you turn it to cold and it's kind of warm all of the time. So if I wanted to do that, although actually under one of the buildings where I live, there is a cryotherapy unit, although I've not been in that, which is pretty damn cold. And I think you're like, 2 to 3 minutes limited in there. So some of the benefits, I was sort of having a little bit of a research before to this one question I had seen, and it's not something I've done a whole lot of myself, if I'm honest. One, because for the last couple of years I've been living somewhere where, apart from paying to go into cryotherapy, cold plunging is quite difficult. But from my understanding, certainly there are a bunch of benefits, because really the key thing here is you're putting your body under a type of stress, a thermal stress. In other words, really bloody cold. And any kind of stress elicits a reaction. You put your muscles under tension and cause damage, stress, a novel stimulus. Your body reacts by getting bigger muscles, stronger. And our body will do that on many different functions. Really, with cold therapy, I think the areas that you would get the most response from, I think improved heart health would definitely be in there. Heart rate, actual cardiovascular health. I think it's going to have certainly impact on that. I could see it also potentially having a degree of an impact on metabolism to a degree. Your body's going to try to heat itself back up. Once you've gone in cold, you come out the other side, your body's going to work really hard to heat itself. Now, I haven't sat and read studies on this, but it would lend itself to me thinking that there could certainly be some degree of an impact on metabolism. Now, whether that would be over the long term or whether it would be acute, very short afterwards while your body's trying to raise its temperature, I don't know, not looked into it, but something to consider. I think it could probably reduce pain, muscle soreness particularly. I certainly have read studies where muscle soreness improving, speed of recovery from training can be improved. I certainly could see benefits from that. If you hurt something, if you pulled a muscle, one of the first therapies you would put in place would be cold to reduce inflammation. You would use heat later on. You wouldn't heat certain types of injuries immediately. You would want to reduce temperature to reduce swelling, to reduce pain. So I could certainly see it having a benefit in that. Also, mood. I would say anecdotally, this is probably, thinking about it, the one that I would hear most. I think there's definitely a temporary mood boost, like a feeling of, I don't know if euphoria would be the right phrase, but I think certainly some immediate and possibly long-term mood, even maybe mental health benefits, reduced anxiety. I think there's certainly possibly some link in terms of dopamine. From recollection, without diving too far into dopamine, although the world runs on dopamine, what it does is it produces dopamine, but over a very long period of time. So we're all our brain is searching for dopamine. Social media is a really good example of this. If you put a post up and you get loads of likes, and you go back to that post and you see it, you get a hit of dopamine. It's like it's a positive reinforcement, and you will go searching for that thing over and over and over and over, and it's just non-stop. But it's up and down, up and down, up and down like a roller coaster. That's bad dopamine management. We don't want that, and that's most people. What we want is dopamine that's massively under control and managed and utilized. A good example is things like delayed gratification, doing something now that gives you no particular pleasure that you know later down the line will, which basically, when it comes to health and fitness, is pretty much everything that we're doing. Massive pain and hard work in the gym now. I wouldn't say technically any major dopamine, but you're getting dopamine over the long haul. Restricting calories now, not really a lot of dopamine in that, but seeing yourself get leaner over the long term, dopamine. Cold therapy does the same thing, but over like a day. It's like, over the day, I think you're getting elevated long-term dopamine response. Certainly could be something to delve into. I think there's a lot of benefits. It's not something I would be like, oh my goodness, I didn't get my cold plunge this morning, the day is going to end. I don't think it's on that level, but I certainly think for some people in certain circumstances, definitely worth doing. It's like one of those things. It's like someone says, is meditation worthwhile? Yeah, definitely. Huge amount of benefits. Will it change your life? For some people, yes. For some people, no. I think cold plunges kind of go in the same category. For some people, it could be absolutely night and day amazing. For some people, it could be like, I don't know if I really got a lot out of it. It's one of those things that goes into that category. Could be life-changing for somebody and really not for someone else. So therefore, on that level, I would say absolutely look into it, try it, see how it works for you. Question 5. When I perform Romanian deadlifts, I'm feeling it more in my back than in my glutes and hamstrings. Is that normal? It possibly is normal, but it's probably certainly not what that movement is in place for. The Romanian deadlift, stiff leg deadlift, very, very similar things, basically the same, if without splitting hairs. It's a hip hinge movement. So, and I think everybody should be doing a hip hinge movement. So if you think of a 45-degree hyperextension, that's a hip hinge movement. A hip hinge, a barbell hip hinge, hip thrust is a hip hinge movement. Romanian deadlift is a really good one, or stiff leg deadlift, or whatever you'll call it. For most people, what this could mean, and I can't see this person doing it, so I don't know their form, is that they're allowing the weight. So let's imagine someone's holding a barbell, because we can all picture a barbell and we are sort of bowing forwards. Yeah. So if you can imagine what a stiff leg deadlift is, we're sort of bowing forwards, kind of keeping our knees straight, not locked, but we're not bending like a squat. So it's certainly more of a hinge in the hip, a bow forward. You will feel it more in your back if you allow the weight to move out away from you. Okay, so as you lower down, the trick here is to basically run the weight down your legs, but you keep the weight as underneath you and as close to your, I would just say, just as close to your legs as possible. You're trying to send your backside out behind you. So rather than your legs then being straight up, they're sort of angled back. So you've sort of moved your backside behind you, hinging at the hip, and then keeping the weight, the barbell, the dumbbells, whatever, really close to your legs. Generally speaking, that will fix most things. At the same time, of course, keeping a neutral spine. So you're neither sort of rolling over and allowing the weight to bend you down and you're getting a big arch in your spine, or you're hyperextending in the other direction. Neutral. Those would be the first things. Also, not arching, although this isn't really back, it depends where in your back you're feeling the pain, by the way. I'm assuming lower back, basically. But also, what a lot of people do is they'll arch or crane their neck up to look at themselves in the mirror. Look at the floor. So you're not then arching your neck back, you're keeping your spine flat all the way up from one end to the other, essentially. Send backside out behind you. What I would also do is go lower in weight. Okay, lower the weight, regress the weight to fix the form, and go a lot slower. Again, I can't see what you're doing, but I will assume most people go too fast with everything. Go a lot slower. Okay, really go through the movement with the goal of, I just want to feel it in my glutes and my hamstrings. Hinge only as far as you really feel that you can. I watch some people do this and they can get the weight to the floor. I can't. If I try and keep the tension in my glutes and my hamstrings, my hands get about just before halfway down my shin. If I'm going super heavy like I used to, my hands would be just under my knee, and that would be plenty. Any further than that, my lower back, which I have a herniated disc in, sort of starts to sort of protest against me doing it. So those would be the first things that come to mind. Again, without actually seeing you do it, these were the thoughts that I've had. Number 6, I can't lift anything heavier than 10 pounds for 4 to 6 weeks after my surgery. Are you going to make me do lots of cardio? Okay, this is a difficult one. I don't know what the surgery is, do I? So if, say, the surgery was, let's imagine the surgery was foot surgery. Well, then I would be like, okay, well, you can probably do everything fine upper body. If it's shoulder surgery, abdominal surgery, okay, like I really would struggle to answer this without potentially saying something that could be wrong. If a surgeon has said don't lift anything heavier than 10 pounds, generally speaking, when it comes to post-surgery, so for me, when I've had surgery and when our clients do, we are led by the surgeon 99% of the time. If a surgeon says it's going to take you 6 weeks to recover, I'd just bloody well believe it. And I've had this from my own experience. I've tried to get back training too quick and ended up having to take longer because I was like, I feel great. The surgeon knew what they were talking about. So it depends on the surgery. I don't think I want to go any further into this. At the end, it said, are you going to maybe do lots of cardio? Well, there could possibly be lots of other things that you could do. Maybe more cardio. Maybe, again, depends on the surgery. Maybe things like yoga, Pilates, stretching. Like there's other things that you could possibly do that are what we would call like active rest, active recovery. Maybe you can start to work on other body parts that are not going to be affected by the surgery. So maybe you can really focus, I don't know, maybe if it's shoulder surgery, really focus on things like leg extensions, stuff where you're not, you can do other movements where it's not affecting the surgery. Now, let's say you've had shoulder surgery. Yeah, calf raises, leg extensions, hamstring curls. There could be a lot of things that you could do that are way over 10 pounds, but are not affecting the surgery. But again, be led by the surgeon here. And then, talk to your coach about recovery. Number 7, my weight has started to go up. Is it possible that I'm building muscle faster than I'm losing fat? Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. In all the years I've been doing this, you could drop 2 to 3 pounds of fat in a week. Like that's about the maximum actual fat loss. Like 2 pounds a week is really on the top edge of actual fat loss for most people who aren't in the beginning stages. You ain't going to build 2 to 3 pounds of muscle in a week. It ain't going to happen. So there's another reason your weight is going up. You could be building muscle. Generally speaking, the building muscle phase is a long, drawn-out phase for 95% of people, except for the 1 or 2% of genetic elite, which you would know if you were in that category. So no, there's probably another reason. Could be stress, could be sleep, could be hydration, could be gut contents, could be a gazillion other things. But of course, I don't know if you're in a caloric surplus or a caloric deficit. But to answer the question, is it possible that you're building muscle faster than losing fat? No, you would always lose fat quicker than building muscle. Number 8, can I do front squat instead of leg press? First answer, yes. Second answer, it's probably not the most next optimal choice. If I couldn't do leg press, I would then look at, are there variations of leg press that are available to me? You've got 45 degrees, you've got swings, you've got all sorts of different types of leg press. Are there other versions of that? Because you will be able to, most people will be able to produce more force, get more done with a leg press than a front squat. Why? Because a leg press is just working the legs. A front squat is particularly challenging. You've got to hold a bar out in front of you. You're going to get nowhere near as much, I would say, force and tension and damage done in the legs than you would a leg press. A front squat is a great movement, but it's technically difficult, way more technically difficult than a leg press, I would say, in my opinion. So I would find a better swap. Hack squat is the first thing that comes to mind. Or other variations of leg press, hack squat, way before trying to then add a bar to the situation. That would be my thought there. Number 9, I keep procrastinating on meal prep. I know I need to do it. Any advice? How much do you want your goal? How much do you want your goal? If you know you keep procrastinating, revisit why this goal is important to you. I could give you loads of technical things you could do, like there's a phrase which is eat the frog first, which is weird when it comes to meal prep, but it means do the thing you know you need to do, or you keep not getting done first in your day. So if meal prep is the first thing, it depends how your day is set up, but if meal prep is the first thing in your day that you know full well you're not getting done, you get up and do it straight away. It's the first thing you do. It's the most important job. You get it done. Out of the way, done. If you leave meal prep to the end of the day, probably that's what you're doing. It's not getting done. Or pick one day of the week or 2 days in the week. Pick a day, put it in your calendar, and that's it. You meal prep. Like, actually make a thing of it. Don't just be like, I haven't meal prepped again this week. It's like, okay, I meal prep on it's not me, but let's say I meal prep on a Wednesday, meal prep on a Sunday. So it's Wednesday, Sunday, and that is when you damn well do it. You put it in your calendar and you stick to it. You make it a thing. Because prepping food is the easiest way to be able to stick to a food plan by miles. If someone doesn't prep their food, then they don't have food ready. They get hungry. They'll eat anything that is in front of them. And that's all of us. That's not someone failing. That's every human on the planet at some point. They get hungry enough, you'll eat anything in front of you. Okay. So if the goal is that knowing that sticking to a meal plan is really what needs to be done to achieve your goal, well, then sticking to the meal plan is a damn sight easier by having the food ready in front of you. And to have the food ready in front of you, you need it prepped. So revisit the goal. Is this where you failed in the past? If it is, then don't allow past failures to predict future non-results. A failure is only a failure if you didn't damn well learn something from it. So if let's say previous weeks, months, you know that this is where you're failing, then learn from that. Know that, okay, this is the thing. Your results are the other side of the things that you don't want to do. I'll end with that. Number 10, do I need more protein on a bulk? Not really, no. If protein stays really similar, you could up it a little bit. It kind of depends if someone's using sports supplements, shall I just say. In that circumstance, you can probably get away with a little bit more protein. But really, a gram per pound of protein is going to be plenty for basically everybody. The thing that's going to go up on a bulk for more calories is carbs. Really, carbs, maybe fats, are the only things that are going to really fluctuate up and down. Protein, essentially, for the most part, if you weigh 200 pounds, 200 grams of protein, quality protein across the day, it's going to do everything that you need. If you up protein on a bulk, you're kind of missing out on the fact that you could have had more carbohydrates. Therefore, more glycogen in the muscle, more hydrated muscle, more ability to train hard. Like, carbs are really the kind of thing that's going to fuel great workouts. Protein are really just the thing that's going to sort of build the muscle afterwards. And you only need so much protein. I have done this in the past where I've ate way too much protein and just had digestive issues. So on a bulk, no, you really don't need any more protein. In my opinion, just stick to the gram per pound of body weight, and it's carbs and maybe fats that would push up to give you the additional calories. There we go. 10 questions. I hope that was interesting. Gents, as always, thank you for dropping into the show. I always appreciate you being here. If you know someone else out there that would use this information and it would be able to help them on their journey, do them a favor. Share the episode with them. Let them enjoy it too. And as always, a 5-star review and feedback on what it is that you want us to cover, what you want me to cover in terms of content is always really helpful, because I am here to serve you. As a busy business leader, life is difficult. Things are challenging. Our job here is simply to make things easier. Simplify things, take away overwhelm. Most people don't need advanced and they don't need difficult. They need things simplifying. In our busy life right now, we don't need more. We actually need less. And that tends to help most people get towards their goal a lot easier. So for now, thank you very much. I will see you in the next episode.